Good morning. My name is Hlavajova and I'm director of BAC, Basis voor Actuele Kunst in Utrecht, the Netherlands. I'm an ongoing collaborator on a number of projects with artist Jonas Staal, including on several of the projects I will be showing you today, which is why Jonas asked me to speak on his behalf. Jonas was not able to come to the United States. Due to his work in the Kurdish region of Syria, the US Embassy has suspended his visa application. This proves perhaps that although we might have many visions of how to occupy power, many times it is power that occupies us. So this is the talk Jonas would have given if he were allowed to be here. The question we are asking is how to occupy power. Today we face a deep crisis of our so-called democratic states, from Trumpism in the United States to the manifold ultra-nationalist or even fascist parties aiming to take power in Europe. One crucial question arises: what kind of power do we want to obtain? I want to share with you my attempt to answer this question through my work. In 2011, I organized, along with 4 artists, fellow artists, a project entitled Social Experiment in an art school in the Netherlands. We invited teachers of the Dutch Police Academy to train artists to learn how to apply legalized state violence. The training space became a police academy within the art academy. Essentially, we asked the teachers of the police academy to train people they are normally up against. We wanted to see power. Or, more accurately, we wanted to know how power sees us. Here, for example, you see training in interrogation techniques. How can we be political artists if we do not understand the actual infrastructures of power that govern us? To occupy power, we need to understand the composition of power. When 1 week later, all participants joined the Occupy movement in Amsterdam, where we formed the organization Artists in Occupy Amsterdam, this training proved very useful since we face state power daily. In Occupy, we began to run a collective tent where we co-organized demonstrations, held reading groups, and gave seminars on the role of art in social movements. The police training had strengthened our temporary collective. By trying to understand the power of the state, we realized we wanted to obtain a different kind of power, one symbolized by the Occupy movement. Now let me give you another example. In 2014, I partnered with a fellow artist and the Labour Party Alderman for Art and Culture in Amsterdam to use the city parliament for 1 day. We invited artists and progressive politicians to sit side by side and discuss the role of art in political mobilization and governance. Both speakers and audience were politicians and artists, but also academics, journalists, students, and activists. As artists, working together with the aldermen, we try to occupy the imagination of power. For example, here you can see artist Ahmed Ogut speaking next to Yunus Osman Noor, a representative of the Amsterdam-based refugee collective We Are Here. Refugees are denied access to political representation, but Ahmed and Yunus demanded the refugee collective be acknowledged as an undocumented political party. Therefore, by using an existing structure like the city parliament, we redefine the stakeholders of power. This and many other projects brought me to work in the region that you see here. Most of you know it as the northern part of Syria, but for the Kurdish people it is Rojava, which means west and refers to the western part of Kurdistan. With the start of the Syrian civil war, Kurdish revolutionaries reclaimed their land to establish their own autonomous government. Their territory is depicted in yellow, surrounded by the Assad regime, which is in the red on the map, and the Islamic State, which is the black one. I was invited to the autonomous region with the team of the New World Summit, the artistic and political organization that I founded in 2012, in order to document the effort of the Kurds to build a new civil society. In Rojava, I witnessed the new borders that you can see here, marked by the yellow, red, and green, symbolizing the Rojava revolution. I witnessed the self-organized people's armies, like women's protection units that defend Rojava from the Islamic State. And I witnessed endless new parliaments created in all theaters throughout the region, where a new model of democracy was being put into practice, such as you can see here in the city of Kamishlo. Now, this image is crucial. The Rojava revolution is not just a fight against the Islamic State and the Assad regime. It is, first of all, a revolution that brings into practice a new democratic model. The Rojavans and the Rojava revolutionaries call it a stateless democracy, a model of self-governance through local communes with an emphasis on gender equality, communal economy, and religious diversity. It was Amina Osse, Minister of Foreign Affairs in Rojava, who commissioned us to develop a new project in the region. She wanted a new parliament that would be a symbol of the revolution and of its political ideals. What was asked of me as an artist was not an attempt to reform or temporarily occupy an existing power, as had been the case with the police training for artists and students or the assembly in the Amsterdam City Parliament. Her commission requested that I visualize the imaginary of a new power, the ideal of Rojava's stateless democracy. This is the design that we proposed, a parliament as a public space that represents Rojava's vision of politics as a form of common ownership. At the center of the design is a circular space for about 250 people, the size of the average commune in Rojava. Yet the center of power remains purposely unoccupied. And the arches surrounding the space have the keywords of the revolution engraved on them. Now, the parliament is a sculpture, but also a symbol, a spatial manifesto, if you will. At the same time, it is a space where these ideals are put into daily practice. Here, new worlds are both imagined and indeed practiced. We began construction of the parliament with the autonomous government in August 2015. 2 months later, we organized an international delegation of representatives of other stateless political organizations, politicians, journalists, academics, and artists, so they could witness the Rojavan model of stateless democracy and celebrate the beginning of construction with the community. We continue the building of the parliament today, and this is a view of the current stage of the construction. Inauguration of the parliament, for your information, is planned in early 2017. Now, I began this talk questioning what kind of power we desire to occupy. Firstly, I believe we should aim to understand power, as we try to do by training artists and students with the police academy. Secondly, I believe we should redefine power, by working as artists together with established progressive political groups, undocumented refugees, and other non-parliamentary forces. Thirdly, I believe, as artists we must create new forms of power by engaging with emancipatory models of politics, such as that of the Rojava revolution. So 3 terms are crucial for me: understand, redefine, create. Terms that name an artistic process through which we not only occupy existing power, but through which we bring new forms of power into being. Thank you.
Thanks for that incredible presentation. The ambitions and scale of that project are just, it must be tough for an undergraduate student looking at that being like, what? I've got to produce an alternative politics in Syria?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But just to say, you know, I know, and I'm not completely familiar with it, but certainly I know that the Kurdish groups that you're working with have had a long history of producing a radical, stateless, feminist politics. And I was hoping maybe you could just, from a personal vantage point, just say what you've learned from that and what other movements you think could glean from that form of politics, because certainly the notion of a stateless politics goes against many ideas of what politics even means.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fascinating. As I mentioned, gender equality is one of the core principles on which the project of stateless democracy rests. I mentioned the writings on stateless democracy, which essentially identify the source of oppression and domination in patriarchy. Extension of that patriarchy could be read in various expressions within society, starting with the family, nation-state, capitalism. And you can only imagine that specifically Kurdish women movement would pick up on this understanding of patriarchy and propose alternative proposition, propose another constellation, another social composition that is absolutely based on gender equality. The Kurdish women movement and women involved in these practices of instituting the world otherwise, because that's what it comes down to, even went so far as to develop a new philosophy that they call the genealogy, where they put colonized subjects, among whom women, as a main resource of how to understand history and how to understand alternative, other futures that concern not only women in Kurdistan, but all of us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.